Can everybody hear me? Kathy and Amanda are here.
Hi, Jeff. I can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Can you see the slide? Hi. Thanks, Amanda.
What?
Everybody can see the slide?
And I can hear you. This is Kathy.
Oh, thanks, Kathy.
I don't know.
And you can see slides?
I can't yet, but that's just because, just a moment.
I have a slow internet where I am today.
Yes, I can see everything.
Oh, great. Great. Thank you. See, we have a few more people to join. Hopefully they'll be able to join. Otherwise, we'll just begin and they can catch it on the recording. I'll just give another minute or so. All right, I think what we'll do is we'll just begin the class and we'll start by closing our eyes and bringing ourselves into the present moment. And starting with a deep breath in and holding it and slowly let it out. And another deep breath in and hold and let go. Just feel your mind and body coming into the present moment, centered. And we'll begin the class for today. And welcome everyone that's here. We're coming from Fairfield, Iowa today. I was able to see Barry yesterday. We didn't get to talk. We were passing each other on the street. So today is the final class of the Nakshatras, class 9. And we'll be looking at Purva Bhadra Pada, Uttra Bhadra Pada, and Revati Nakshatra. And as always, we'll begin with the opening Vedic chants. Om Gananam Tva Ganapati Gum Avamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatiyana Shrinvanuti Pisi Dasadanam Om Mahaganapatahi Namaha Hari Om Gurupyo Namaha Hari Om Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tatsmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunatu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes. And I begin the class by reminding you that you're interested, that Barry's going to be holding a Nakshatra technique class that'll be starting in May. And you have the slides in front of you, so there's no need for me to go through all of it again. But just remind you in case that is of interest to you. And all the information is here in the slides for where you need to go in order to sign up for that class. And meanwhile, we'll just move on, get into the first sets of slides. And I apologize for the slow moving net today. All right, so today we're going to go through Purva Bhadrapada, Uttara Bhadrapada, and Revati Nakshatras. These are, this is a very sort of mystical area of the zodiac right now, because these are moving through the Sattvic Purushartha, which are the last 4 signs of the zodiac. And these are the last 3 of the 27 nakshatras that we've been studying. So there's a need to understand the mystical powers of the Bhadrapadas. And these are about the Rudras and the celestial serpent. So you can see we're moving into a more sort of transcendent level of the chart and of the zodiac, and we're looking at the soul's transcendence here. And the Bhadrapadas show a deathbed where the ego goes to die. So here in the Vedic lore, the serpent Vritra or Ahi appears as a powerful rival to Indra, the king of the Devas. And he lies around or under the water, and he seemed to have control over the waters in the heavens and on the earth alike. Then later on in the Vedic text, there's a reference to Ahi Pundya, Bundnya. That's a mouth twister, Bundya. And these 2 nakshatras represent the earlier and the later victories that you must attend to seriously if you're going to seek awakening and enlightenment in this life. So how well you water and nurture the new roots that we were talking about from the Ashadas, for example, and growing those new seeds that you planted in Mula, that influences the growth of your life through Purva Ashada and also through Uttara Ashada, where you have the earlier victories. In the Bhadrapadas, we're dealing with that element of letting go and becoming realized. And so these are called the earlier blessed event and the later blessed events in the Purva and Uttara components of the Bhadrapada nakshatras. So you can see this whole flow of the last Purushartha that we talked about. And this is the capper to that final section where after we're completing the journey around this section of our life. So the first nakshatra we're going to attend to is Purva Bhadrapada. And as I said, it's the earlier blessed result. It's also looked at as the earlier auspicious result. And it shows the lightning strike of blessing, truth, and inspiration that connects you to heaven. And this nakshatra connects Aquarius into Pisces, where the universal being, the universal man, becomes the cosmic man, the cosmic being. And the deity here is Aja Ekapada. The name means one-footed goat. And the sign and degrees are from 20 degrees in Aquarius into 3 degrees, 20 minutes of Pisces. And this particular nakshatra is ruled by Jupiter. The symbol is a double-faced man or a doppelganger, a stage, the front legs of a death cot. So this is where you're approaching a vision of what the goal is. And this is all about understanding that in a very sort of churned, enlivened environment. So just before Purva Bhadrapada, we had Shakta Vishak. And that was where everything sort of got charged in the atmosphere. Things started to change, and we're looking for a way of breaking free of being trapped between two worlds. And as that energy moves forward into Purva Bhadrapada, what we see is this desire for a greater understanding of what awakening is. And this is a fierce and severe energy because it comes like a lightning strike out of the sky. So imagine you take all of that Shakta Vishak energy, and after that, you're flowing into a charged atmosphere that's coming in Aquarius. And the race is, of course, about Manusha. This is about mankind and the collective of that. And the animal is the proud energy of the lion. And the lion is very generous in many ways of how it does things, but it's a powerful animal. And you'll see the power that relates to this nakshatra. So the story goes that Aja Ekapada, the one-footed goat, who's the deity, he and Ahir Bundya they're like twins. They're the deities of, Ahir Bundya is the deity of Uttara Bhadrapada, and they're usually evoked together as a pair of celestial deities, and they're both serpents of the sky. Now, they're Rudra's attendants, and in a way, I refer to them as his hitmen, because their job is to remove the final vestiges of darkness that are left in our awareness, and so that we can begin to let go of the ego and merge into our natural state with the source, either into enlightenment, or we pass from this life and we go on to be reborn again in the next cycle around the zodiac. And in this situation, since we're ending the course, we'll look at it directly as though it is achieving that final goal. And so Aja Ekapada is he's related to this lightning strike that comes down, and it strikes one spot like a one-footed goat. And this is the fire of heaven that hits us suddenly. And that word pada means foot. And it's about the tangible results as feet or what we have on the ground. That's the tangible. So we're part spirit and we're part earth as well. And so in the practice for this nakshatra, which connects Aquarius to Pisces, this is where we've been dealing with that more universalized nature of ourself, and we start to merge into that cosmic mystical nature of Pisces. So we're no longer a citizen with a stake in the world. We're no longer hanging on to believing in the illusion. We're now ready to be liberated because we've gone all the way around these 24 nakshatras, and we're in the last 3 to complete the 27. So this is the period of completeness where we leave the collective and we become that mystic energy. We drop the ego, we let go of everything. And this is why Pisces has Mercury debilitated in it, because all those skills that we think were ours, which never really were ours, that we were on loan from God, are the things that we no longer have. They're like vanquished in our life at this point. They're starting to subside in our intelligence that we think, and all of our skills that we think is guiding us through life. they need to drop away. And you'll see this as we're getting older. As we age in our life, we have trouble with our memories, and all of the skills that we thought we had, they start to fade in a way. And so in this nakshatra, what happens is we're looking for the final liberation that we can achieve through our lifetime. And so what we need is an inspiration from heaven that gives us a feeling that we're almost at the goal. And so when we're on the back legs of a death cot, we're not up close and personal. We're seeing what's called a glimpse of what actually is emerging as our true nature. And so in the Buddhist tradition, they call this a satori moment, where you have a flash of inspiration and it comes from the heavens. But care has to be taken here not to mistake that glimpse of truth as though you've actually reached the goal. And often there's a lot of fanaticism, excuse me, and unchecked fantasy projections that are not integrated. And we think we've gotten enlightened. And there's other delusions of grandeur that are also shown here. So when we have a satori moment, we get that glimpse, and it feels like we understand it, but we're not close to that goal. We're sitting on the back legs of that. And this whole evolutionary process of moving to Revati is going from the back legs, where we're getting prepared to surrender the ego, and we start to move forward into the Uttara phase of Bhadrapada. And that's where we're really sitting, like right across from the goal. We can see it. And so here it's just sort of a vision that we get a glimpse of that. And you may notice in your life, you've had deep experiences that happen that are extremely mystical, especially when we have the moon moving through that area of Pisces, which is going on right now. We're having we have a stellium of Venus, Sun and Mercury together in Pisces right now. And there's a little bit of that sort of unintelligible sense of whether we're being appreciated or not. And there's that power of the sun there, which can show that wanting to understand that deeper connection and making it more self-oriented to ourselves. What does that mean to me? We're actually having that experience in a way right now. And the moon nakshatra, I believe, moved through, it may have been in Uttara Bhadrapada today. So it's very timely for what we're talking about. So a lot of times when you start to have experiences, it's really important that they're grounded in our practices. And because we can get pretty fanatic, oh, wow, I know what enlightenment is. I've had the experience. And the truth is that very few people actually get enlightened while still in the body, because that takes a lot of work. It takes a lifetime of dedication. And so our ego may hang on and think that we've achieved something, but oftentimes if we're not absolutely meticulous and disciplined to doing the practices every day, it's extremely difficult, in fact impossible, to reach enlightenment through just an inspiration. It has to be checked, it has to be integrated, and that is one of the phases that is really important in order to take ownership of it. Now, enlightenment is not something outside of your nature. You're born enlightened. It's just the vision was blocked. You don't see it all. And we have lots of, there's a lot of fear associated with what happens when you get enlightened. What do you give up? What are you letting go of? How are you being liberated? And what does that really mean? So there's fear associated with it because it's something coming that we don't know what it is. And we talked about that sort of imagined fears that we can have here. And so Ajja Ekapada and Ahirbudnya they are here to take care of those measures. And so what we see here is that Satori moment comes. And so when we look at just Purva Bhadrapada, it's ruled by that one-footed serpent or goat. And it gives the fire to raise a spiritual person up in life. And that's called Yajamana Udyamana Shakti. And its basis above is the good of everything, the good of all. And its basis below is what is good for the gods. And so these cause the entire world to be supported. And so when we look at the strengths here, it shows that you have a very expansive yet focused and unique mind. And you bring idealism and hope to the daily life situations, as well as your vision of humanity. And the way you assess these is by the planet that is associated with this nakshatra, and here's Jupiter. And Jupiter today is actually in this area of the chart. So we're beginning to feel some of that idealism and hope coming back into our life after like this long pandemic that has been bringing fear to everyone. And so your strong opinions are balanced with a deep philosophical outlook, which is Jupiter, and a naturally inquisitive mind, which prevents your strong will from becoming rigid or dogmatic. So here you're beginning to let go. You know that blessed event is coming. You're just starting the process, and you're learning how to let go of rigidity and fanaticism, which Jupiter controls in Sagittarius, as an example. And also all those dogmatic, what's the word? Well, dogmatic's good enough for it, but we look at that orthodox understanding which Jupiter rules. And this is the area where we get a lot of our opinions, and they're based on our beliefs and philosophies. And so here you have the courage to fight to preserve the honor of a worthy cause. And that is that power of the lion. The lion is about honor and the courage, which all comes from the actual planetary version of that, which is sun, that courage energy of the lion, to fight, but not just to fight for the pride of the family, you know, the honor and all the things that are worth fighting for. That's the earlier stage. So really being willing to step forward and start to face those elements of our ego that we must surrender, which are really related to the third house in our charts. You know, what we like to do and what we don't care about how others feel about it. And these are the last three signs, or the three nakshatras, which is fairly analogous with that kind of energy. We're questioning the ego and what it's, you know, we're exploring it. We're exploring what we've learned from our long journey around the zodiac. And what we realize is that we have to fight for the things that are worth fighting for. The shadow issues is that you may aim too high and you push too hard and expect others to naturally fall in line with your expansive views. And this can lead to some very pushy, harsh behavior if you're not careful. And that's that fanatical side of the Jupiter energy that can create that. So at times, the means can justify the ends, and you can be two-faced in order to reach your goals. And it's where you can talk out of both sides of your mouth, as an example, about one thing or the other. And like if someone is dissing what it is, you talk out of one side, and someone who's supporting it, you might speak out of the other side. So there's that nature, that Jupiterian nature, which looks at the higher consciousness and also looks at the belief structures, one being fire and the vision and the ability to see it, and the other one being escapism, letting go, kind of going into the dream state. So at times, the means, as I said, can justify those goals, but you need to be careful not to blow things out of proportion, which Jupiter does. It projects things into, into something that's a little beyond reality most times. But it uses imagination and creativity and all of those things. And so being impatient with those that can't grasp those certain aspects and concepts can be seen. And if you really look at your life, you can see a lot of times where we cop out on our spirituality. Everybody says they're spiritual, but very few people really put in the efforts that's required in order to do it. And so this is a time where we have to question ourselves. And there's a lot of spiritual bypassing that goes on in the world. They think, that thing is, oh yeah, I do yoga, and maybe you do it once every 3 months. Yeah, I do pranayama, and maybe you do it once every 3 months. And this is kind of like this is the reward that comes at the end of the long journey that says you've disciplined your entire life to the spiritual nature. And that's what Vedic astrology about. It's all about spirit taking form. It's not about the realities of the world. And yet what ends up happening is we fight constantly in our life, if we're not strong on our sadhana, about how the world is impacting us. And the truth is we have more impact on the world than the world has on us, because it's all illusion. It's all a big cosmic dance of light and shadows. So Purva Bhadrapada gets you set for that reality to understand that. So this is the 25th nakshatra in the zodiac, which bridges between that sort of society view of the world into the more cosmic, liberated portion of life. It gives you the desire to nurture others and feel emotionally connected and peaceful. And your happiness in life is determined by your emotions. The symbol is a sword. So emotions are surface level things, and having your happiness being determined by the surface level of life is pretty emotional. And this is why we have to dive deeper than that. We need to go much deeper than that. And sadhana is what takes you to the reality of spirit and shows you that that's just what you are. And the more you move in this physical form, according to the laws of nature, according to yoga and pranayama, and bringing up the life force in the body, that spirit takes form through the breath, the very first breath that you take. So those are the things that spiritize you, inspire you. And that's what the inspire is, the Greek word for breathe in, take a breath in, become alive. And so this thing of relying on emotion is where fanaticism can come from, because it's not grounded, and it's not grounded to the depths of your heart. And so when we look at the water signs that are all about emotion, those are the areas in our life that are related to whether we're connected deeply to the source or not. And then when we're on the emotion side and the feeling side, we're bouncing around on the surface. And Pisces is a deep sign, very innerly reflective, feminine sign, which means it doesn't do anything without thinking very, very deeply about it. Whereas Aquarius is a masculine air sign, so it's much more prone to just acting and initiating action. And so we see the polarities here. There's an action that gets initiated that brings an inspiration. And then we see that inspiration maturing as we remove the last vestiges of what's in our life. And what happens is we become like helpless animals at the end of that. We're just lost souls that need to be collected and brought back home. And that's what this process is beginning. So here we're at the 11th and the 12th signs of the zodiac. And so the 11th sign deals with all the social issues, and it's also related to our highest ambitions, what you want to accomplish with your power, your highest worldly gains. You know, it's your last chance to get a big gain out of the world, which should be really the spiritual gain. And so it deals with excess and the stress that it brings. And when we're in this phase where we're starting to let go of the ego, there's naturally going to be, you know, an excessive amount of stress associated because we don't know what is coming. This is the part that's so mystical, is that the dream is unfolding, and the actual reality of returning to the source can be very scary if you don't know what it is. And our ego doesn't like to die. It naturally evolves through sadhana, where we stop being a somebody and we start to realize that we're a nobody. And then that nobody becomes an everybody. And that's part of the natural evolutionary cycle. And here's where we give up being somebody. We think we're somebody and we start to become a nobody. And it merges with dream state and dreamless sleep and things like that. So our aspirations and financial goals, material gains, friendship, impulses, abundance, success, all these things are the things that we amass throughout life. And here is where we expand in life through large groups of people in our clan. And the planets here show their expansive nature: public figures, public servants, politicians, celebrities, famous people, older siblings, wealthy and highly successful people, community and the world stage, inheritance, grants, and funding. Those are all 11th sign kinds of things, you know, where near the end of our life, we've had connections with lots of people. And we have all these things that we think are the important things. These are the, this is where the cosmic man needs to emerge out of that universal man. And I use that word as to include all mankind, all humankind. So Aquarius is all about outer structures and our individual self learning how to harmonize with the collective. So there's a lot of social duties and structures that are involved in it. And it's a sign of humility, and one where we seek to serve those people. But what we can see from it is how we negate ourselves, and we go into much more of a humble state of empowerment in our life. And we do that as an empowering key to higher awareness, because higher awareness comes when you serve, when you give of yourself to others and not think that you're somebody who needs to have things given to you. So it's not a sentence of life of servitude. It has to do with surrender and taking care of other people, looking towards others and how we can serve those people. And the 12th sign of the zodiac is all about escapism, surrender, letting go. A lot of confusion that can come up. And as we're reconnecting to the cosmic self, you know, in the 12th sign of the zodiac, it is where we just surrender everything. And there's a hidden level of our subconscious, unconscious that we begin to see emerging through our life. And so this is related to like the dream state and the hidden nature that comes from the subconscious and the unconscious mind. So that is perfect ground for the sign of Pisces, which is really about inner meaning, like I talked about, going deep inside. And these feminine signs are all about the depth of life. They're the deepest, most powerful of the signs because of that inner reflection, whereas the masculine ones suffer from a lack of reflection and too much action, oftentimes, in their desire for enthusiastic, excitement to go forward with it. So here, this is in Pisces, this is the inner meaning and learning how to relax into metaphysical truth. And, these are the areas of dream and escapism and all its forms. And so you can experience the joy of the soul if you can control your imagination and develop some discrimination about it. And it's pretty hard to develop discrimination in Pisces because that comes from Mercury energy, and Mercury gets debilitated here. And this is one of the examples where I think I mentioned earlier that, people go to prison because they haven't thought things through thoroughly, and the explanations that they give don't make a lot of sense. It's a debilitated Mercury energy. And so they'll always tell you, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything. And this is the area where you literally do become innocent. You let go of everything. Everything fails you at this point, and you become just the pure self. The ego drops away, and then you're in the fullness of that state of being. So Jupiter is the most appropriate of the planets here because it's all about the wisdom that you've learned and the hope and the meaning, the teachings, and you're aspiring to a higher good. And that involves morality and abstractions of morality. There's a lot of growth that takes place as well as our optimism and our faith sort of flush out the meaning in our life. And if we're using our practices, we start to see the reality, and we can start to explain that to other people and not just blindly believe in it. And, Jupiter, one of the things that it brings that's the most inspiring is to give life itself, which comes through children. So this is a very much an area of what is the life? It's another spirit coming into the body, the spirit taking that form. So the main issue here that we're dealing with is maintaining optimism and a hopeful mentality and an expansive vision from that expansiveness and the grace that comes from Jupiter. And if they're proper teachings, they will take you extremely far. And so there's a necessity to ground your heavenly inspirations in that practical soil of your daily routines. And that's what evolution is. Like, you've heard the saying, chop wood, carry water, before enlightenment and after enlightenment. Nothing changes. It's like people want to think, oh my gosh, he's enlightened or she's enlightened. And oh, if only I could be that. They're so lucky. Well, you are enlightened. You just need to clear the sleep from the eyes and recognize what it is. And we project all these big stories about what enlightenment is. Here in Fairfield Island, it's the home of those spiritual projections. As people bemoan the fact that they've been meditating their whole life and they still haven't reached any of those states. It's because their awareness isn't on observing the present moment. They're actually totally believing the people, and I'm not blaming Fairfield for, but it's the truth of everyone. When you can't experience those, you're not being in the state of the sakshat. You're not seeing what's happening, being present in every single moment and not resisting it. And what happens is you realize everything is just a flow of spirit. It's a flow. And you've never been anything but that completeness, that wholeness. But the awareness has to recognize that and wake up to it. And so the deity of Aja Ekapada, as that one-footed goat or serpent, he's just one of 11 of the Rudras who do battle to preserve and uphold the relevance of universal law. It's all related to the Dharma. So air and water, intellect and feelings provide the environmental conditions for this divine spark to to strike. So we have to have a feeling which motivates us on the surface to do something, which comes in Aquarius. And that's where this lies, right on that boundary of the first few degrees of Pisces. So it's just starting to feel that cosmic nature emerging, and we're dealing with air and water coming together, intellect and feeling. And so the emotion can come out there. And then what we want to do is take that into a deep devotion into the heart. And that provides the divine spark, the hope, the inspiration, the grace that comes from the Jupiter energy. Even if Jupiter is debilitated, it provides grace. It just distorts it according to whether there's happiness in your life or sadness, and that's the extent. So we move on to the later blessed result, that's auspicious, that comes, which shows the soul that's really determined to reach the depths of truth. And it's not satisfied with just a glimpse of liberation. So now there's a big focus on it. So this is where Ahirbudnya comes in. And this goes into the richness of Pisces. So we're at 3 degrees, 20 minutes into 16 degrees, 39 minutes. And this is about reality, wisdom. This is about dealing with pressure and time. All of these things are important. And so Saturn plays the role as the ruler here. And Saturn's the one thing that no matter what you do, it governs death and the time of death. And it looks at all the things that we need to be serious about. And especially in Capricorn, where transcendence is happening there, and how we take that and teach it to the world. So Saturn is all about the mistakes we've made, all the challenges we've faced, all the pressure and the pain that we've gone through. And so I always say to people when I'm doing readings with them, if they're belly aching about how hard life is, that you will see the tremendous spirituality in people who've been through a tremendous amount of suffering. And it's like it destroys your belief in this world. And it makes you have wisdom because you know when you do that thing, this is what's going to happen from it. And so here in Uttarabhadra Pada, we have to face those final dark, difficult, fearful moments because we don't know what's coming. And the ego likes to hide. It doesn't want to be crushed. It doesn't want to go, doesn't want to let go. And so again, we have the same symbols of the double-faced man, the stage, the back legs, but now we're at the back legs of the, at the front legs of the death cot, where we're right there, right across the aisle from the goal, up close and cozy and comfortable, hopefully. And the nature of this is very movable. So it means that there's a lot of drama. It changes dramatically, sudden and often. And again, here we are with the race being the minutia, because this is what man faces. And the cow is that sort of gentle animal that's patient and chews its cud, and it waits for whatever the next result is. And so there's this sort of surrendered nature starting to manifest of everything's just taking care of itself. And Pisces is that sign where fate just takes over. And so there's always this feeling that love conquers everything and everything will just work out. And there's a lot of truth to Pisces, because what works out is you just merge with that cosmic ocean of consciousness. And so the story here is Ahirbudnya, the serpent of the deep, is ruling on this nakshatra. And whereas Purva Bhadrapada came from, with Ajak Ekapada, came from above, Uttara Bhadrapada and Ahirbudnya drills down into the depths. And that comes after the lightning strike gives an experience. So the serpent goes deep down into the holes in your psyche and transforms your fear of awakening into a strength. And being another one of the Rudras, he's a fierce part and a transformative part of Lord Shiva. But you know, there's not much said about him. He's very mysterious. Even in the Vedas, there's not much said about him. So he's a mystery of a person. He's a mystery of a god. And so whereas Purvabhadra Pada, too many A's and D's, shows a glimpse of your eternal soul, Uttara Bhadrapada is where you make a commitment to discovering those hidden depths of the mind and the psyche. And so letting go of everything, you don't know what can happen because you've been holding on for dear life, most of your life. And Saturn is that thing where you have to face death. So Saturn ruled nakshatra in a metaphysical Pisces. It shows the determination and the commitment to reach the goal. And if you remember when I went back and talked about the Saturn ruled signs, especially Capricorn, this comes after Sagittarius, where we have these beliefs and we need to question them and we need to learn the practices so we can walk or talk once and be able to explain it to people and not just, you know, blame what we can't explain. So that flows the Saturn energy, which bridges in both Purva Ashada and the first few degrees of Uttara Ashada happen in this particular area, and they're related to the Saturn nakshatras. And so here it activates this kind of energy, and you'll see that the key thing of each of these planets is when those nakshatras are activated, those planets are activated, just like in the dashas, in the Vimshotri. So this is about determination, commitment, and really acting, doing those practices and never stopping to do them, being so determined, so committed, and so willing to be isolated. You know, not a lot of people do that. And so I repeat that statement that very few people get liberated while still in the body. And it's an ascension process that we're actually all in the middle of doing right now as time is shifting with Saturn in that movable sign. We're getting timelines going in different directions right now. Strange kinds of things that we may be aware of or not so aware of. So Uttara Bhadrapada is ruled by Ahirbundya, serpent of the depths of the atmosphere, going into the more subtle. So its power is the bringing of the rain, the Varshodhyamana Shakti, the gods of abundance that rule the earthly sphere. And so it's dealing with those things that we believe are real, that earthly sphere, which, you know, we have a lot of fear around what can happen when we lose this world, when we leave this world. I just had a dear friend transition yesterday from down in Florida, and all the people called about the fear of this person leaving the body. And the truth is, we never go anywhere. We are the unvanquishable self. We're the immortal light that never goes away. And so there's just going to be another coat put on, and you'll be back before you know it. It just shows you drop the body because the karmas are too heavy for the form that you're in. And so this is why a lot of people drop the body earlier in life, or they may take on a disease or something like that, all of which is the pain of Saturn, dealing with some kind of difficult. So this is about the power to give abundance and fame, that this is a tongue twister. Kyapayatri Shakti. Kyapayatri Shakti. So its base is above his birth, and its basis below is for growing of the plants. And from these three factors, this is how the worlds gain their stability, from the rain, from the growth of the nature growing around it, and from the the power that we have of abundance and notoriety. So these strengths and weaknesses of Uttara Bhadrapada show that you act powerfully and with a very principled, determined effort in order to reach your goals. You can hear the Saturn in that. Goals, goal orientation, dedication, principle, determination. So you're good at generating wealth due to a consistent, inspired nature and the capacity to wait for the most opportune projects and moments. What does Saturn do? It waits. Doesn't move very quickly. It looks for the right opportunity. This is why when Mars is in Capricorn with Saturn there, Mars is always exalted there, wanting to, come on, let's speed it up. Let's just blow this popcorn stand up and get going. And Saturn will sit there and say, now just hold on. Don't be too hasty because you might blow up something that's important, something that you need. And so this brings out this sort of down to earth, humble nature that makes you a good friend. And it has realistic expectations of others because Saturn is about realism. Look at what's real. The whole time we were going through this pandemic, we were hearing a lot of stories being told about what was going on, a lot of fear, anxiety, which Rahu can deliver for that, and the Ketu, which is like, you know what, I don't even want to examine my beliefs. I've always believed this, and that's what I'm going to believe. And so we go through that situation. And meanwhile, in Capricorn, where Saturn was sitting, is what was really going on. And it affected governments, banking systems, large organizations, corporations, and the economy and the stock market. All of those things are the 10th sign of Capricorn. And so this is the energy that is the Saturn energy, that is the planet behind Uttara Bhadrapada. So on the shadow side, it means that the means may justify the ends due to your lofty goals. So you must be careful to maintain your integrity. And when you get into the Aquarius side of things, that low self-image can also lead to low behavior patterns, as an example of it, and your integrity falls off. I have a dear friend who is a Aquarius, and he's a very wealthy person. I think I told you about how he won all that money, but where he chooses to hang out, kind of seedy areas. So his integrity gets questioned about those things. He thinks it's funny. But so you may be tempted into excessive control issues and manipulations in your dealings. And he's always trying to tell me something, trying to manipulate the story. He's a dear friend. So the shadow issues are also escapism and laziness. This is definitely his case as well. It's also possible when lacking a clear direction and worthy teachings. And the guy has no spiritual beliefs and he has no direction. He just does whatever he wants. So he's a manifestation of this kind of energy. And so you preserve your alone time. You like to have your own alone time, maybe too much on your own. And you have to be careful of using your natural intuition and psychic ability towards selfish ends. You know, every single sign, and the ruler of it is an intuition. Everything brings intuition because the moon flows through there and it delivers that experience to the moon. So the moon feels that reality. And when it becomes very self-directed and selfish, that's a shadow issue. So when we look at these in interpretations, this is the 26th nakshatra, which resides in the center of Pisces and leads to auspicious results. Hopefully, you know, Uttara Bhadrapada is ruled by Saturn, which shows that you have a very serious, practical, and determined nature. And it's interesting how we might play around and be unfocused most of our life. And when we get in the later years, all of a sudden we start to get very serious and practical about the things that are the most important in our life. And this is part of our evolution because we realize we're not that ego. We're not that thing that was driving us before, but we're surrendering that now. So you prefer what works and what's useful to what is imagined and theoretical. So we'll see all these issues of the 12th sign showing up as escapism, surrender, letting go, confusion, reconnecting to the cosmic self, the dream state, the subconscious and hidden nature, and also where energy just fails us, where energy just drains away. And you can see this a lot in people as they get older and they retire. Most people go out and spend their money on a big dream vacation, maybe go on a cruise, eat themselves sick, drink themselves silly, and they do all of the things that drain their energy. They escape into the world instead of escaping into the self, where the best thing to do at the end of your life is to really enjoy the silence of meditation. Maybe go on a journey to a foreign country and like an ashram and go deep into the self rather than escaping from that into the world. That's the higher expression of the Jupiter energy in Pisces. So again, Pisces inner meaning, letting go, relaxing, dreaming, all of those kinds of things. And you can experience the joy of the soul if you can control your imagination and develop some discrimination about it. Acting with courage and forbearance is the key thing that happens here in Uttarabhadrapada. Exploring life's great mysteries and facing the answers truthfully. And this has to do with the Saturn energy. You got to look at the reality of it. So this leads to real profound breakthroughs and a lot of compassion for all, which you can see comes from that area of the energy that was brought in from Aquarius, that compassion and that willing to take care and be humble. It's about a high capacity to endure personal suffering for the greater, not food, but for the greater good, as the motivation is higher law. It's about achieving your dharma. It's not about personal gain or comfort. And you can see that in a lot of people's lives as they get older. You may think it's uncomfortable if they're not doing their practices, and they do. They suffer and gain a lot of challenges as life begins to leave the body. Or also giving up on the ego is a very difficult thing for a lot of people, to just sink into the naturalness and stop thinking that you're somebody special. So the hidden electric power of the nervous system is also enlivened and aligned with mystical energy by Ahirbunya. And you'll see when you look at the interpretations that I've written that, what he's doing and how he's making sure that you don't escape that particular aspect of it. And there's some interesting phrases in that article that I wrote about it. So this planet of Saturn ruling it shows that there's limitations, solitude, pain, prevention, structure, insecurities, pressure, fear, stress, commitment, hard work. And, this is where old age begins to manifest in a spiritual way, if you want to look at it that way. We're getting old. We're getting ready to be liberated in a spiritual sense from that old, worn out ego. So the deity is a wise and benevolent sea snake serpent, and he plunges into the depths of the emotions, and he keeps burrowing down into each hole in the psyche in search for self-knowledge and for the knowledge of the world. It's trying to root it out you know, and say, you've been believing in all this world, now you let go of this world. So he's the defender of natural law and acts with courage and forbearance. And this leads to profound breakthroughs and compassion for all. And the breakthrough is you're sitting on the front legs of the death cot. You're right there across from that moment of realization, and you can see what is about to happen. So the third and final one is about the flow of spirit through the mind in this state of revati. And revati is called wealthy and rich, because when we go back to our source, the true wealth of life and the true riches of life is being ever centered in the self, which is that light of the sun, that generosity, that pure life force in us. The deity here is Pushan, who's the shepherd god. And this takes place at 16 degrees 40 minutes, all the way to the last degrees of Pisces. And I'll fix this in the slide. I don't know what I did here. It shouldn't have said this, but so the ruler is Mercury. So Mercury is all of those things that I talked about, where we have to let go of our skills. Surrender comes from dropping all those things that we think make us up. You know, in order to be in Revati, which is where it's that humane, even course through life, it feels appropriate, but it's about communication, playfulness, and fairness. That's important here. It's about the real letting go, communication through the deeper connections. And it's a very humane way of going through that course. And it's a dreamy dream is the best way to look at it. The symbol is the mridanga, which is the drum of Shiva, and the fish, the two fish, swimming in opposite directions. And so this is where when you let go, you're not standing on any legs. Pisces is the only sign that's footless, because it really relies on just that fluid motion, like the fish, of the tail fin, which just allows it to glide. So there's a real sort of letting go and just letting fate happen, and things just sort of happen, and everything works out, is that sort of feeling. So the mridanga, the drum of Shiva, is that pace of time as the clock begins to slow down and the drum beat goes slower and slower, but it's giving that energy in the mridanga, which is a two-headed drum with a bead tied in the middle, and you're flipping it back and forth and bum, 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 bum. And if you've done bhajans, you know all about it. And this is a nature of soft and tenderness. This is where, when you let go, there's no harshness here. You know, Mercury is that energy of playfulness as well, and that energy of flexibility. And this is the place where all the softness, like you're just almost to the end of the goal. It's been a long, tiring journey, and you may have dropped a few things along the way as you let go. And it's Pushan's job to go collect all the things you dropped and to collect your soul and make sure you find your way home. And so with all that dreamy, sleepy nature that happens in Pisces and that escapism, Pushan has his hands full, herding everybody back to the source. And this is very much a Devic energy. The energy of a Deva. And the animal is called the elephant, which is that, that big force that brings about a reality and has all of these abilities, as if almost like coming out of the source, this connection to the ancestors with this memory that they never forget, that they can remember. It gets passed along from generation to generation through the female elephants. And it has to do with the ability to have that piercing tusks to be able to, to fight battles and pierce through the illusions in the world, as well as the supple nature of of its snout to be able to pick up a small pin, like a tiny pin, that sort of degree of that. In Revati, none of that matters. None of that matters, because at that point, everything is just slowing down, draining away, going into that dream state. So the story on this is Pushan is the deity, and he's one of the Adityas. So the Adityas are those creative light energies, the sun energies that help bring life and sustenance to people. Now, he had his teeth knocked out at the same time, or in the same ceremony where Bhaga had his eyes poked out. It was called Daksha's Yagya. And if you remember, I talked about this when we talked about Bhaga, which was the god of delight, which is Purva Palguni. And what was happening was Shiva and Parvati, it was their wedding night, and this was a celebration, and everybody was talking about Shiva and, you know, how dirty he looked and how he was unkempt and naked and knotted hair. And as he came into the event, he noticed that Bhaga and Pushan were talking to each other, and Pushan must have said something, and then Bhaga winked at him, and Shiva caught that wink. And as a result of it, he poked out Bhaga's eyes and knocked out Pushan's teeth. Well, you know, here where Pushan is the shepherd of the gods, leading the animals and the souls home after that weary journey, you don't need either your eyes or your teeth at this point, because you're surrendering, you're letting go. And so this brings that entity, Pushan, back into it. There's not much to say here, that Mercury is debilitated. It's better to just listen to the sounds of silence and the beat of the drum of Shiva, counting down the remaining moments in this experience. And so he also protects that road home, and he allows all the lost objects and animals to be found. He brings everything about that self back to a realization so that it can merge with where it came from in the beginning. And he's considered the gentlest and the most selfless of all the deities. And Venus gets exalted in this nakshatra. And as the bringer of divine love, it operates at her highest form in this last degree of the zodiac. And in many ways, Venus is the worldliest of all the planets, and yet it is she to whom the physical world becomes pointless at this point, because she becomes exalted here. This is where this exalted Venus is that radiant quality of Venus, which is where you are made of the substance of love. You are love. Love is not something you need to gain. It's what you need to recognize. You already are that. And this is also part of the realization that you're born out of love, you are love, and you return back to love. So the physical world is pointless when you look at that from that higher perspective. In the practice, Revati is the final nakshatra that exists at the very end of the zodiac, and it's analogous to the soul completing its journey around that zodiac, weary and full of life's lessons. Very gentle at that point. Once you've learned all the lessons, what's there to be stressed about? The only thing you can be is gentle and just ready to rest, to return back to that point. So at this point, the gentle shepherd Pushan guides that soul home. And this is the part of the Pisces that's totally self-sacrificing. There's no ego associated with it, at times to the detriment of oneself. So, or a situation that might require greater individual autonomy. There's just a bunch of letting go. So we see these extreme boundary issues and unrealistic fantasy projections in this nakshatra as well. Now, you'll see in somebody's chart, like I know this particular person who's a Pisces, and just has a Pisces ascendant, but has this nakshatra in her first house, and you can see that she has all kinds of fantasy projections. You'll see these kinds of things. You'll see first a lot of creativity, but you'll see a lot of projection going on because it's Jupiter ruled, and it's usually confusing, unrealistic kinds of things. Dreamy dreams is one way to look at it. So all things considered, this is definitely the most gentle and selfless of the nakshatras. So Revati, governed by Pushan, the nourishing form of the sun god, sometimes identified with the power of seeing, because he didn't lose his eyesight. He had his teeth knocked out. So it has the power of nourishment symbolized by milk. Well, if you don't have teeth, milk is a little bit easier for you to be able to swallow. Shiradyapani Shakti, and its basis above is the cows, its basis below is the calves. And these bring about the nourishment of the entire world. So there's something about returning back to the source, to the nourishment from which you have emerged, where true wealth comes to be expressed in Revati. So the strength and the shadow issues will, in Revati, are important to understand from the perspective that you have a highly creative mind and the desire to use it for the good of all. You're protective of others and you're willing to help those in need. A lot of times you'll see that energy where someone likes to rescue helpless animals or to work with helpless people, like the homeless and things like that. So you have good luck in business and all money-making pursuits. Your sincere efforts will be rewarded due to good past life merit and generosity in this lifetime. And you prioritize connections to the family and to the community. The shadow issues are, and when you see somebody as a Pisces, you'll see these things very strongly in them, especially the Revati things, but you'll see it naturally in the Piscean person. They care about that bigger collective, that ocean of souls, if you will. And they often have a lot of beautiful past life merit just to become that sort of mystic of the Piscean person in this lifetime. The shadow issues are that you can become too self-sacrificing to the point of masochism at times, and you can grow to resent others for that. And this is one of the signs where there's a lot of pain in water signs because they notice their separation between spirit and the body. And so you can get in a painful crisis in a shadowy way with this that undermines your natural desire to want to give selflessly. And self-destructive behavior through indulgence and escapism is possible. And a lot of times, I hate to say it, but a lot of Revati people get stoned, drink alcohol, they take stimulants and all things like that. Not all Revatis do it, but there's a lot of escapism, and several that I know, they call themselves left-handed tantrics as an excuse for their need to imbibe alcohol and things like that to excess, and that can lead to some of these things I'm talking about, where this self-sacrificial thing. They might get drunk just to be able to get away from the reality of what they were facing. And you might be prone to misdirection and wandering if depression and cynicism take hold. So you can see a lot of the Mercury decisions, the intelligence, the discrimination, those all show up here in these, both in the strengths and shadow issues, particularly in the shadow issues. So the 27th and final nakshatra of the zodiac sits in that last section of the zodiac, which is in Pisces, and the symbol as the drum we talked about, and it's ruled by Mercury. So again, we have the same escapism, that surrender, that liberation and loss, but you can add to it some of those kind of dream fulfilling things that people like. Oftentimes in Pisces is where you like to watch TV, go to movies, all those things. Eat popcorn. That's also possible. And so that's also something to look at here. And a lot of the things that we consume mindlessly while we're letting go and watching those kinds of things, they're not good for us. So you can experience both liberation and loss, surrender and letting go. But there's also this hidden nature that's of feeling isolated through sorrow or peace. And this freedom from responsibility and work. If you have a Piscean friend, you'll notice they don't like to work very much. A lot of times, they do well when they're with somebody who generates most of the work, and then will provide the creativity and the wisdom. So, of course, they're a sign of the Brahmin caste, so they'll always have some wisdom to exchange. And in that particular situation, that's how they give. So all that inner meaning and relaxing into that, they're quite comfortable teaching in those ways, but they also talk about the ways that people escape and the way they escape in all these forms. And so they can experience the joy of the soul if they can control all of that imagination. Success and wealth through shepherding lost items, souls, and protecting helpless animals. So the divine shepherd applies nurturing spirit as a protective influence, providing a shelter for weary, tired journeyers as they finish their trip around the zodiac. Now you'll see a lot of like Jupiterian Pisces that are teachers. They're always helping for people to understand what this is about. They'll talk about the knowledge in terms of even Vedic astrology. They'll bring it in and they'll talk about the phases of the moon and how that's affected in each of the knowledge points that they bring out, and you begin to see how everything comes from that same source. This is one of the skills that you can see coming out about it. And so this is an energy of blessings and rewards for having stayed the course and completed the journey. And among those rewards and blessings are wealth and success in all endeavors. And wealth comes from all kinds of things, as we learned in Dhanishta. It's not just money, but money is something they care about, and they spend a lot of time making sure that it's there for them. The ruling planet being Mercury is all about the flexibility and communication skills and all of those things. But it actually, in Revati, has more to deal with those things of letting go, which are the things you have to do alone. Like feeling alone, beginning to see what the world is really about, being somewhat critical about it. There's definitely worry as they let go, but there's profound purity and perfection as well. And it's also related to the structures of the laws of nature, because it's the gentleness of nature which brings you back to the source. And opposite Pisces in Virgo is where the home of all the laws of nature are, waiting for your beck and call to fulfill what you need through intention, where you can do less and accomplish more. So the deity Pushan, the Aditya, he's the expression of the light as the sun, which is a nourisher. His protective influence presides through the last few degrees of the zodiac, providing all weary souls wishing to rest a place to call home after returning from their journey of life's lessons. The other thing you'll see is that oftentimes the Revati energy makes people accommodating to other people. And if someone has stayed too long at the house to drive back home, they'll make sure that they've been taken care of and that they have a place to rest. I was married to a Piscean person, and that was what she always did. At the end, we'd be up talking for a long time to the guests and giving them whatever they needed, and then we always welcomed them to spend the evening. Don't go out. It's too late. All those things. All right. So that brings us to the end of this particular nakshatra. And so I just sort of want to remind you of some of the things as you're going through the readings. And also when you're exploring a reading for someone and you take the time to look at their nakshatras, you can actually do just a spiritual reading with them, where the whole thing is unlocking all their deeper spiritual powers and heroism, and walk them through this moon, sun, ascendant, ruling planet. And it's just such an interesting story. It would be so captivating. They're not usually long readings. They're usually relatively short. Oftentimes, depending on what's going on, I will give this reading at the end of the reading. I'll just sort of draw everything together by saying, let's just look at your spiritual nature, especially someone who's particularly challenged in their life about these issues. They don't see themselves as attaining what it is that they want. So what you want to do is think about that story and the karmas that are unfolding in each one. Think about the ruling planet of it. And when you look at their life and you look for those planets active in their Vimshotri dasha, and weave all of that into the story. So you may also see it when the Lord of the Rashi unfolds as well. But you have to remember the nakshatras are the prana powers. They're the shaktis, like the mystical superpowers that we have. So all of a sudden you may see some divine power come to life through you when that dasha planet gets activated. So make sure you look at those things in the chart as well. And if you haven't, if you don't have all that background just yet, that's okay. Hang on to this knowledge, and as you're going through your education process, you'll be that much further ahead of other people that have not gone through and looked at the nakshatras, because usually in the instruction, it's one of the last things that's brought forward in the classes, because it's so it's kind of one of those very deeper spiritual essences that's hard to tie down until you understand each of the signs and each of the planets, and then it really integrates more solidly. So once again, you'll usually see the intensity of these actions when you look in the planetary ruler of the nakshatra and in the Vimshotri dasha scheme, and the ruler of the Rashi, and those connections of the dasha planets in general plays a big role. So that wraps up this end of the presentation. And now it would be nice to talk to a few of you and put some charts up and see what we can find here. And let's see if I can find them all. I've got a couple charts already loaded, but I wasn't able to bring them all up because the Parashara's light saves everything as the last name. So we've got Amanda with Revati and Purva Bhadrapada as her ascendant. And it would be wonderful to hear from Amanda, because I've been talking about Pisces, and to have your viewpoint of it.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Hi, Jeff. Okay, so as I'm listening to the lecture, there's a big story that happened in my life when I was young that came to mind as a great example of Purva Bhadrapada. I was 11 years old, and I was playing with the neighborhood kids, and there was this little boy who was the brother of my friend. He was 7 years old. And I remember I was sitting on the porch, and the little boy, I looked into his eyes as he was getting into the car to go off somewhere with his father. And speaking of lightning strike with Purva Bhadrapada, what I experienced was a sense of knowing that came over me for the first time ever in my life, that I would never see that child again alive,
Mm.
and that he was going to die. It was so freaky and so creepy because I was only 11, and it was the first time I had ever experienced that. And so then, I let it pass. And as the day went by, that evening, my mother got a phone call saying that the little boy had been in a tragic accident and that he had died. So that was very, very creepy for me. So
Yeah.
that is the story that I have pretty much lived with, but I didn't, I couldn't tell anybody that until I got older. And then I started reflecting on it and realizing what had happened. And then I always knew that I was kind of a little different. And I always felt like I had one foot in the real world and then one foot in the spiritual world. I've always felt like that. I just didn't really understand what it was until I started studying Vedic astrology and learning so much more about myself. So that was very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And so a lot of intuition there. You see that? That came with that as well. And
Yes.
did you have problems with your body when you were younger? Did you have a lot of pressure on your body, or did you have any pain or difficulty as you grew up, or were you treated painfully?
No, I don't think so. I was pretty active as a kid, and I, ran and played like a regular kid would. I was pretty, I had a lot of energy as a kid. So I'd bike ride, skating, all kinds of stuff.
So you felt pretty inspired. There's the Jupiter energy. That's great.
Yes, very inspired.
And how do you feel about that emotional planet of Moon there with the Revati? Um, this gentleness. Are you a rescuer of lost animals and things like that?
Yes, I am actually. I have, for some reason, you know how there are people that when they see babies, they get all, warm and fuzzy inside? Well, whenever I see little dogs, for some reason, I love little dogs. I am
Yeah.
attracted to them, and I just think they are so precious and adorable. And yes, I did rescue one.
Yeah, it's a lot of times you'll see that in a Revati energy in someone's chart. Always ask them if they're somebody who likes to collect lost items, like when they go for walks, are they picking up things that they like, and also how do they treat animals and things like that. And if it's not animals, it'll be friends that are kind of down on their luck that they want to take care of.
Yes, I do find that and another thing is like I can be very nurturing towards the elderly, I find.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, and I want to comment on whenever you said that there's this big thing about escapism with Pisces people, because that is so true. But like when I was younger, of course I would escape into like I'd drink a lot. But as I got older and I started to realize, I really don't like this very much. So I got away from that. And I was never one into drugs. I didn't care for that. But I have when I was younger, I had a very wild fantasy life mentally. I could just sit somewhere and entertain myself mentally for hours, fantasizing about anything and everything. And as I got older, though, and I started finding myself more and, studying Vedic astrology, I now find that I have much more healthier fantasy escapes, you know?
Yes. So my favorite phrase is always dreamy dreams. Um,
Yes. And I also wanted to comment on the projection piece of it. What I have found is that I did not realize this until it was pointed out to me through studying Vedic astrology. But I used to have a very bad problem with projection uh, onto partners of
yeah.
what my fantasies were and what I wanted and I needed. I would not get into the reality of what I was living in idealist instead of being realistic about partnerships and relationships with men. And so, once again, you have to take something that's unhealthy once you become aware of it and turn it into something that can be healthier. So,
So look at your Jupiter in your chart in Chitra, all those conditions around it with Mercury and Swati and which shows the partner. And so at some point, those things are all related to like sexual fantasies, for example. And because the sign of Libra in and of itself, as for a Pisces, is the eighth house, which are the things you don't control. And your Jupiter was neutral, which means it was hardly present. Your ability, the projection was there through the Chitra energy for sure, conditional, beautiful, and practical. And Swati is all about spreading the energy, the prana all over the place, and it's the Mercury, the partner, the fourth and the seventh ruler in the eighth. And then you have, the debilitated sun. So the feeling of, maybe I don't know if I have enough courage or enough strength to really voice what it is that I want because I don't have any control. It's all under the other's control. And
yes, I do often feel like I just don't have any control at all in that area of my life. I
yeah,
really do.
I resemble that remark. So that's it's
So I let it go, right? So you just kind of let
trust.
it go and you're like, okay, whatever happens is going to happen and whatever's meant to be is going to be.
That's right. Yeah, and it's going to come out as as an air expression. So the mind's going to be very active during that time. There'll be an operative intelligence there too, because in Libra it's an intelligent thought, but it's also a hesitancy and a doubt. This place of doubt, and when you're out of control. The interesting thing that you did is you go back and you research, well, what was that happened? It's kind of shocking. And the only thing you can do in the eighth house is trust, because the divine is watching you from the ninth, saying, let's just see if Amanda thinks she's in control. And when you trust, you give up any sense of control, and then the divine blesses you for no reason at all, because you can't affect the ninth house at all. And there you have your Jupiter in a neutral dignity and using only half of the energy. And it seems like it did okay for you. It produced benefic results. And but it may have felt like you didn't have the experience. It's an infant kind of expression of it. So it may have been like, I don't know what's going on. I never experienced this kind of thing before, something like that.
Yeah, I would say so. A lot of confusion, like you said. It is a lot of confusion.
Yeah, it definitely is. The eighth house is the weirdest thing, and it's also, it brings on a lot of imagined fears that we talked about before, and being a Libra is that sign of ruled by Venus that's always movable and dramatically changing, sudden and often. Um, it's a place where, you know, when things start to change, your life is like on a teeter-totter all the time, back and forth and back and forth, and you're always trying to find some balance there. And then when you do find the balance, most Libras will go back and tip it again because they like to feel that. But for you, it's out of your control. So you may have felt those kinds of energies. It's a great way to begin to express it. And now that you've seen all the nakshatras, you start looking at the things, look at the way that you focus on nurturing people in Punarvasu with your Rahu, for example. Look at how you use your Mars energy to really sort of express courtship, you know, through maybe service or through, you know, an issue in your in the vitality of your life, feeling that vitality. So start going through and telling the story and finding out each of those things. Why is Ketu in Uttarashada? What does that feel like for me in the 11th house, as an example? And really start to make each one very rich as you're doing the readings with everybody. Bring out the whole thing and talk about the planet if it's active with the Vimshottari right now. And it just becomes much more of an interesting experience to unfold the knowledge to people when you're doing their readings for them. It's a great way. Well, thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who else would like to share? We got people hiding behind the microphones. See, we have
Kathy will share.
okay, Kathy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm switching over
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Okay.
Uttarabhadrapada.
I think I have, yeah, I have Venus there.
Yes.
And I noticed, you know, Venus is going through Gandanta right now,
Yes.
or it has been the past 2 days.
Yeah, just cleared. Yeah.
And I wanted to mention the deity. I can't pronounce it. Ahir Budna, whatever.
That's good.
I can't
Wouldn't-
pronounce it correctly.
wouldn't-
The deity.
Yeah.
Yes. And you talked about the hidden electric power of the nervous system.
Yeah.
Well, because you mentioned that this week the house was sold where I live, and the new owners took possession on Tuesday, and it's been a source of stress for me because they're trying to use illegal methods to remove me to make this house into an Airbnb. So I've been very strong, but I've been very inwardly upset about, I know I have to move, but I want a little bit longer trying to work with them. But suddenly on the day Venus went into Gandanta, I could barely stand up. My lower back went out, and I haven't done anything at all. And this has happened several times in my life, an unexplained lower back issue. And now I'm convinced it's to do with Venus, you know, being in Gandanta and my emotions affecting my back, lower back. But, you know, you said not much is known about this deity, and there's a lot of hidden mysteries. And you mentioned the electric power of the nervous system. And now I'm really wondering about this, and I'd like to study more about it. And I'm going to watch my own physical body when Venus is in Gandanta. You know, I've never noticed that before. So I thought I'd mention that to you.
Yeah, and also the Uttarabhadrapada is a Saturn energy which rules the spine. And so like I know a person whose mother she has Uttar Bhadrapada in her first house as a Pisces. And her mother was the daughter of an SS officer, and she used to beat her all the time. And you could see that in the sign. She also had Rahu in the first, and so it was a pretty eccentric life for her. And it wasn't just beating her, but also subjecting her to abuse of her boyfriends. And so you can see the Saturn energy coming out of that. And in your chart, it's exactly what you described. Fourth house, Saturn, fifth house, your creative nature, what you want to do about it. And it's all in the sixth. And those are all Saturn, those are Saturn signs that are going to bring the energies of those houses to those areas. And cause a lot of those things to manifest. And in the complexity of yours, you can see that Saturn energy being activated by that will affect all of the Saturn ruled signs. So it's maybe you had a love for the place, and it felt romantic for you in a way that meant you enjoyed it, and you considered yourself maybe lucky that you got it, all those kinds of things. And then they come in, and it's sort of a punishing situation. It's very difficult for you, sixth house. It affected your health. All those things are real. And you're in this K2 Venus period right now. Actually, yeah, in K2 Venus, Mercury. Yeah. So K2 Venus alone would produce those kinds of things, definitely.
And also, Jupiter changed signs this week, went into Aquarius the day after the house was sold. And a person that has become close to me just suddenly wrote to me and said, you need to send a letter to them today before they send any letter to you. And this was the day that Jupiter went into Aquarius. And so I spoke my truth in a letter using the love of my Venus, trying to work things out amicably, but subtly telling them how much I knew about the law, and that, that things have to be done according to the law, and about my knowledge in this field. And anyhow, it probably scared the heck out of them, but I'm trying to do it in a very spiritual, loving way, even though they might not be spiritual, loving people. I will see what happens, but it just coincidentally happened to be when Jupiter went into Aquarius. So I don't know, I'm hoping that that'll work out. And also my Venus is trine Uranus, and I have a strong background in Western astrology, and I'm convinced that that my Venus is modified in a major way by being exactly trine Uranus on my midheaven. I have very unusual careers, astrology one of them, and I'm very attracted to Uranian type individuals my entire life. And I have, many sudden unexpected events related to Uranus. It's a proven fact in my chart. I've watched it intimately. So I wanted to mention that, you can't ignore those aspects.
Where is Uranus sitting in your chart? And
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Where is Uranus sitting in your chart?
It's on the midheaven.
Okay.
At like 13 degrees Cancer.
Okay. Interesting. I don't do a lot of work with the outer planets, except for like research on sort of a worldly basis is how it's often used in Vedic astrology. But there's nothing wrong with blending together what you do because you have knowledge in both. So I find a lot, Barry does that, and Joni.
And also, and also Venus in my sixth, I'm definitely a medical intuitive. I've diagnosed before a doctor has, so I my own illnesses. I know I use my intuition. I know I read there's a stronger psychic component, Venus, Uttara, Bhadrapada. And I just wanted to mention that to you, even though the sixth house is not such a good house, that is a good thing for me to be able to diagnose myself. I thought I'd mention something good about that placement.
Yeah.
So
it is really good because it shows that health ability to focus.
I just want to tell you, and every time I have major transit in that house, people purchase more readings from me. Usually I don't have many health issues. There's a lot more service to others going on. I've noticed that. I anticipate some negative health whenever. I fear Mars transiting my sixth, but usually it's all about being of service to others. I have good things happen most of the time. So I just thought I'd mention that. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. No, it's every bit of it's valuable. So who else would like to share? All right. Doesn't look like anybody's raising their hand.
Hi, Jeff. This is Melanie.
Oh, hi, Melanie. Melanie, what's your last name?
It's Moyer.
Okay, I was looking for you on here because I had you up last time. Let me bring you up. Okay, let's see if we can find you here. Ah, there you are. Okay. All right. So you have Purva Bhadrapada.
Yes. And it is K2 in the fourth house. And the only thing that I could think of about this, to say about this, is that the fourth house is the house of mother, and K2 indicates the previous life or the spiritual life, correct?
Yeah.
And I had read that when you have K2 in the fourth house, there's a separation from mother. So I was separated for like 4 to 5, I think 5 or 6 months as an infant from my mother. So I was just, wondering if, it was funny because that's what I had read about it. I mean, it was a weird situation. I was less than a month old, and she came down with hepatitis, and they had to separate us. So I had to go live in a different state with an aunt and uncle.
Wow.
And didn't go back home till I was close to 6 months old.
And hepatitis is like an inflammation, isn't it?
She actually contracted it in the hospital during when she had me for the birth.
Interesting.
It is a liver disease.
Yeah.
But it's highly contagious, and she didn't have enough strength anyways to take care of me. So I don't, this is of course something that I don't remember, but I think it definitely affects a person,
Yeah. That K2, I've had a lot of clients, which shows they didn't have a lot of responsibility when they were kids with K2. They had their freedom to run around and they became extremely knowledgeable. You know,
Oh, that's me completely.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
brings
had
up perfectionism. Yeah.
I had no boundaries, and from a young child all the way through um, teenager. I mean, I was actually living alone at 16. You know, so that definitely explains me.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool. No, then, and also with K2, a lot of times you might see things come back into your life at some point. Like what, and you did. Your mother eventually came back in your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And others seems like that happened in my life, other people too.
Do you ever experience beings from the other world coming?
I have dreams, especially shortly after, more than one time have lost a loved one that shortly after or even before. One of them was before they came to me in a dream. And beforehand, the one that came before, was explaining to me that they were tired and they just didn't want to deal anymore, and they ended up committing suicide. And the one that came after, that came to me in a dream afterwards, I was just so sad about it, and they came to me and we were walking in a big field, and she said, I really like it here, so don't worry about me. It was very I don't know, soothing, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that has to do with, I do feel like, I dream about people who have passed over, and it just seems really very, very real. Like
Yeah.
I'm having a conversation with them, like I'm having a conversation with you.
Yeah, like sometimes we just pin one or two words on K2 when it's all those possibilities. A lot of times I'll just drop one of those with somebody when I'm doing a reading, and the one I use the most is their perfectionism with it, because everybody is very quickly to say, no, 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 I'm not a perfectionist at that. And it's because K2's scrutinizing eye is always looking at everything in such detail that it only notices what's not perfect. And of course, the world's not perfect.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And that it tends to make a person afraid to make a move, because it's like, this isn't perfect yet. So I
So
can't.
are you a mother now?
I am. I am. I have
So
two. I
look
have
at
two
how
children.
good you are at it.
I'm sorry.
Look at how good you are at being a mother.
That's the one thing that I think I did really well in life. I just, they were wonderful, and they still are wonderful. And yeah, that was and I don't know. Let's see, my moon and mother, but moon is mother that in the 11th. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So your ambition was to be a, a mother, was to be
I
a
didn't
great.
know that. For the longest time, I was refused. I was not having children. I said, I'm not going to do that because, well, for one thing, I felt like, there was enough people in the world and I didn't have to do that. But they did, and I did end up becoming a mother, and it was a wonderful thing for me. Yes.
Yeah. And that Hasta, it's just the intention is all it took.
Yep.
All the details in Virgo, they're at your beck and call, waiting to make everything happen.
Ah,
And all the details of getting. Were they a large? Did you have a large family?
you mean, did I come from a large family, or did
Did you have a bunch of children or just
oh no, just two.
okay?
And I was, like I said, I didn't think I needed any children, and so after the second, I definitely was like, I don't need more than two. Yes. But I tell you what, all their friends were always at the house, so I had plenty of children, and it's still happening. So
there you go, you know, moon, which is your ninth house. It's the highest dharma is to like take care of that group of people. It's like you were probably the favorite house in the neighborhood.
Even as they were teenagers, yes, they all the teenage kids too, yeah, and still, believe it or not, you know, they all, but I love it. So
That's great. You know, all that inspiration, that Purva Bhadra Pada, Jupiter, you know, it's your values, it's your creativity, children, all that stuff
oh,
is,
they're our future, and I think that that's what it should be about.
yeah. So look, you were taken from mother so that you could reflect on all the values of mother and,
Ah,
you know, see all those things. And it's about thinking about her because it's an air sign where you're like trying to figure out, you know, what's the fair way to think about it. And you want her to be well because it's Aquarius, where you're always about making sure that everybody's safe and taken care of. And that's why people come to your home, you know. The children
yes.
know, and you're also that metaphysical energy of it. You know, it's your most spiritual metaphysical energy, your heart, and and you described it so well. Yeah,
Um,
that's great. Thank you for sharing. This has been one of the most fun sessions of all of them. It went so fast.
yes, thank
Um,
you so much.
oh, you're welcome. I feel so honored to have been able to teach this to. It's the first time I was able to teach it. Um, I use it a lot, and I was writing about it with my own teacher. Um, but I really wanted to teach the course, and it was just an intention. And Barry reached out almost exactly on the day when I had the intention and said, "Hey, why don't you come teach an Nakshatra course?" And
Do you
so,
have Hasta in your chart?
what's that?
You have Hasta in your chart?
No, I don't. I absolutely don't. But I have Chitra, which is the divine architect, and it's my Venus is there in Chitra. That's all I have there. But it's for Capricorn. It's my Raja Yoga Karaka, and it just it's what I do. I love to teach. I love um, to communicate with people is one of the most important things that I do. And I have Saturn exalted in Swati in my 10th house. So my biggest problem sometimes is to know when to stop talking.
You going to teach any more classes?
Yes, yes, I have 200 people in South America that want to learn. Um, and I did a 4-hour presentation on Vedic astrology for a bunch of coaches, and they all brought their students, and now I have a huge group that wants to learn. And I'm going to start with the planet signs and houses in May and teach the first course there, and then continue to progress through as their interests are high for it. And yeah, I've
Nice.
been teaching for 46 years. I've been teaching meditation and you know, Vedic knowledge. I spent a month with the Maharishi in the 1980s, and he told me to travel around the country and teach Vedic knowledge, just teach about the structure of the Veda. And um, it was one of the most beautiful things. And I found my notes when I moved a couple days back. I found all the hand notes I had written, and I had put together a presentation. We didn't have PowerPoint in those days, so um, I'm going to recraft all of that and give a talk on Vedic knowledge so that people can understand the structure of it. And it was done in such a rich way because he brought all the top Vedic knowledge experts from each of their fields, and he had all the array of the literature out on the table. And the whole month was listening about, you know, Ayurveda and Jyotisha and Dana Yoga and all of the different forms of, you know, the Itihasa, and going into the the depths of what each of them mean. And I think I'll do a class on that coming up.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah. And so I'll let you all know. I'll send you an email and tell you that which classes I'm going to do, and if you would love to participate, it would be great to have all of you. This has really been you've been one of the greatest groups to like present to, and I'm sorry for all the pressure I've been under in my move. I had to literally get rid of like 90% of what I had, and I've been carrying stuff around for 30 years. And so I had a huge change in myself to simplify. And I'm living out of my van right now, traveling all over the country. So I couldn't carry anything with me. And it felt so good to just let go. And as a Capricorn, I'm all about resources. So I had a bunch of them and I had to share them with all my friends because they just wouldn't fit where they were. And I'm turning 67 this year. So I'm going through a big, I'm at a point where I really want to do something different in my life. And I've been held back in teaching Jyotish by my teacher because, not because I don't understand it, but it's more of a power structure than anything. And it's time, it's really time that I just step up and do what I need to do. When Mars went into Aries in my fourth house, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. I had to get up. And that was exactly at the time that Barry called me and said, Jeff, come teach. And so I said, yes, absolutely, love to do it. And next time though, I'm going to teach it on Zoom because it's much easier to use than this GoToWebinar. But Barry uses it because it really helps with the pre-scheduling and sending out the messages and everything like that. But I have other magic in the background that can do all that. So anyone else have any last things to say before we finish up with the final blessing? It's really been, I can't even tell you what a great honor it's been meeting all of you and listening to your own great mastery of astrology. It's really been great. I just think the more I expose myself to other people and share my knowledge with people, that we all grow. We all grow from the benefit of each other's understanding. And this has been the first time I've had a chance to just dip in it for 9 weeks. It's just fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Jeff,
And yes.
I'd like to say thank you very much for doing this because I really enjoyed this class and you are a good teacher. So you should definitely continue on to do this.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. That's great. When I first thought about doing it, it's such an, nakshatras are so obscure for most people. And I didn't know what all the levels of the class were. And it was wonderful that even though some of you are in the early stages of learning, that you picked it up. It really, it showed me that my judgment of it needs to be more expansive and not concerned with that. But I'm a totally spiritually dedicated guy, and it's my favorite part of the astrology to share that. And I also love helping people on a daily basis with, I spend about 4 hours every day doing seva for people all over the world that are in some kind of crisis situation, don't have money and things like that. And I think it was because of the nakshatras that I was able to really just kind of embrace all that. And sometimes it's just the nakshatra you share with them, which puts them at ease. And so look at, enjoy the readings that I put out there and be free to use them and change them in any way you want, as long as you adhere to the basic fundamental things that are going on. The story is what you're seeing happening. And the more you're in the state of the observation, you're not going to miss any of the things. And I tried to call out when the storms will show up and when the branching issues can happen. And you'll begin to see a whole language of expression that the nakshatras can deliver that we can't get out of the planets. And then you'll also see a lot of the consistency with the Vimshotri dasha and how powerful it is that when those get activated. And a lot of times you can look at when you're doing a reading with someone, you can isolate the prominent nakshatras. Like when you get something like if they're in a Rahu Mahadasha, for example, you'll see Ardra, you'll see Satabhishak, and you'll also see Swati. Whether it's in their chart or not, those energies are active by where they exist in the chart. And you're talking about an energy that's manifesting there, that's Rahu energy, and it'll show up in their life, and it'll show up in those 3 different ways, with or without it in your chart. And that was a principle that I learned at one point in my class. And there's a great book that I've seen. You have to read the chart from where things get exalted and where things get debilitated, because it tells a lot about it, even if it's not in the chart. So when you start to add all the debilitations and the exalted states and the Mula Trikona and own signs, you start seeing a deep expression of how those energies are manifesting in each of the with a planet or whatever. And when you look at the areas where they get debilitated, the whole reason people doubt themselves in Libra is because it's the place where sun gets debilitated, and they're hesitant. They don't feel courageous. They don't feel lit up. They feel the inner light, and it's in darkness. It's not lit up, but it's still there. The sun never goes out. And inside shows that you always have the power to do whatever it is you need. And I started off the conversation with the Mars issue with Saturn in Capricorn being, hurry up, let's blow this place and move on to the next thing. And Mars is very courageous. It wants to move forward and make it happen, even if it's not there. There's a courage behind there that shows up, and you have to account for that ability. In when you're talking, you might bury it behind what you say, but you have to talk about the courage that's there, because that's what Mars will bring in that point. And you don't say they're courageous. You might say, at times you might notice you have a lot of courage, as an example. And they'll go, how do you know that? And there's a great book called The 108 Ascendants that my teacher wrote, which just kind of blew my mind when I opened it and started reading it, because it just puts everything on the chart and starts looking at how that impacts each other. And so if you haven't read that book, it's a great one to put in your bookshelf and use it as a reference point every once in a while. He studied for quite a while with all the ACVA guys, Frawley and many of the early Jyotishis who were behind the workshops and stuff that happened in Sedona. And he just found some inconsistencies in how some of the exalted and debilitated planets were functioning. And so he just stopped and dedicated 2 years to going into the Order Shastras and really kind of taking it apart. And after the 2 years, he wrote that book. And I've yet to see any book on the market that really goes into that. There's a great book written by a lady named Radha. It's a PhD book, and I have it. It's packed away in my car somewhere, but I just bought it recently. Barry suggested it. It's basically a PhD treatise on nakshatras. And the first part of it's pretty confusing. It might be okay to keep as a reference book, in your on your library shelf. It's like $45, so it's a expensive buy, but I've only gotten about 20-30 pages into it because I got it right before I moved. And it might be okay for a reference point. I don't think you're going to do any readings out of it because it's, you know, it's typical of a PhD study that somebody would do. And a lot of the deities that I talked about, she talks about earlier versions of them and things like that. And but it's great for history to get an idea of that. And when I'll cover a lot of that stuff when I bring out the Vedic Studies course and do that one. And I'll probably just do it in a couple of hours on a weekend. We wouldn't need 9 weeks to study that. It should fill.
Jeff,
Yes.
Prash Trivedi also wrote a book about the nakshatras, and it's pretty much like all the research he's done. And I found it to be really, it's like an encyclopedia in a way for the nakshatras. But the book that I really like about that he wrote, Prash Trivedi, is the Rahu Ketu experience.
Yeah.
My God, that was like the best book on Rahu Ketu, the best book I've ever read. So
his Nakshatra book, I used to think it was one of the best because he comes from a lineage of Vedic astrologers that have dealt with the nakshatras. His father is a pretty good astrologer as well. And but there were some things that he put in it that didn't jibe with my research.
yeah.
So when I started studying and actually got deeper into it, and I wasn't using his book. I was, you know, learning from Sam Jeppy, and I even challenged Sam on a lot of those things. And because he wasn't sure, you know, why do they call it this? Why do they call it? He was saying, I don't know. And as you notice, I didn't know what the animals meant, and then I just went and spent the time to understand it. So we all had a deeper feeling on it, and there's a lot of value in reading what he says because he brings out the actual names of the stars and the locations and everything, and he has some history about those stars, which I think may come more from Western astrology because I haven't found them in any of the Vedic texts. So there are points where I'm just not so sure, and I'm not one of those people that uses the padas of the nakshatras, as you've noticed.
Yeah.
Because they don't, when you really get into the logic of a pada, if you're over in Mula Nakshatra and you're dealing with the pada that's in Taurus or something, there's, you know, it's like there's not any cohesion to it, and it becomes really confusing. The further away you get from the Rashi where you're explaining it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes things start blending in a very confusing way. And so I always refer to them as, you know, I'm still talking pada, but I'm using my own language, and I'm not reading it according to the way he describes the pada. But it's if you sit on your nakshatra of your ascendant and you go deep into what he's showing, you'll learn a lot of characteristics about yourself that you didn't know. And after I had my entire life fall apart in 2013, or 2015 after a car accident and a divorce, I spent a lot of time reading his book, and I looked at Uttarashada, which is my ascendant, and every single thing in there allowed me to understand why I am who I am and how I survived that whole issue. So there's some value in digging in and really understanding, and he provides so much depth in each of the nakshatras that you can get an understanding of yourself, and it's probably worthwhile having on your shelf. But if you're going to add that, you might as well add Camilla's book. And
I have Camilla's book, actually. Yeah.
And Camilla concentrates everything and gives it to you in a big bite. And
Well, what I liked about Camilla's book is that she actually she breaks down every single planet and what it would suggest in the nakshatra.
yeah, and she did a great prediction this year about this is the year of the moon. You know, we have Shravana, all the planets were in Shravana, and then we got the node and Mars moving into Rohini, and then you know, the last one left is Hasta. And so she said the mantra most powerful for this year is Gayatri Mantra. Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yo Naha Prachodayaha. So when you go into that nakshatra of Hasta, look at what I wrote in the text about the way it unfolds, not only as the Yoga Sutras, but how it is related to Gayatri, and how the Gayatri at different points in your life, when you really dedicate yourself to it and you're doing it in a real pure way, it deals with people in the last stages of their life and how to feel the contentment of, you know, sort of going into the forest and leaving the social world. And it also deals with the young student, the brahmachari, when they're growing and what it delivers for them, and then also the accomplished being who's the householder. And each of those will be in the nakshatra reading when you dig in there. And if I didn't put it in that one, I'll go find the ones that I wrote and I'll send it out to all of you.
I have a suggestion or an ask, I guess. What if we started, for this group specifically, what if we started a group on Facebook perhaps, that we can just share information about specifically the nakshatras and what we find, you know, through our own research and things like that?
Yeah, that's great. If you want to set one up. I don't spend much time on Facebook because I told you what happened to me with Shut to Be Shocked the last time. And
Yeah.
I was put in jail for 10 days. And so I've kind of left them alone. But there's a bunch of new social media programs coming up. And we're going to, it's highly likely we're going to see the end of Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, because of what they did with the censoring that went on. That violated a bunch of, it violated constitutional laws, and that's yet to happen. But those were severe violations. And so there are a number of very wealthy individuals that have funded new platforms that are going to come up, and they'll probably replace them. So we should be a little.
What's really cool now? Clubhouse.
There's also one called MeWe. I don't know Clubhouse, but MeWe is one that people are using, but I don't have a lot
You
of
have to be invited for Clubhouses, to my understanding, though, by somebody who's already in.
Yeah, or you can go into the wait list. Actually, someone from the Vedic, someone that I met on the Sedona Vedic Astrology Conference when I went, she invited me. So I just joined this past April, and I just heard about it right before she invited me.
So go in there and invite us.
I only have 2 invites.
Oh, they only give you 2. Oh.
Yeah, they only give you 2 invites, but if I invite one of you, then the other can invite another, so we can literally all get in. I think Sam is actually in there. He could invite you.
Is he?
Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. Now, the other thing is Telegram is exploding, and Telegram has everything from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all included in it. So you can build your own channel and you can control who goes into it. So that's another one, and it's really expanding. They're putting a whole bunch of new movie video stuff in it that you can use, and they have live chat, so we can get in and talk to each other and have. So that's another one, and there's no cost and there's no restrictions once you set up your own sort of channel for it. So
well, that's how Clubhouse works too. It's you basically can have like an hour show. Like we can literally have an hour show for nakshatras and like get more people interested perhaps.
That'd be fun. Yeah. We can talk about, we could have somebody give us their birth information and throw a chart and just do the hero's journey for them. That'll count.
That would be really cool. If you want, I'll send you an invite.
Yeah, that sounds great. please do. So for everybody, you know my email address. It's jeffvpool with an E on the end at gmail.com. And that's the one I rely on the most. I also have jeffvpool at protonmail.com. Barry and I use that quite often. So you feel free to reach out to me anytime. Ask me any question. Invite me for something if you're interested in doing that as well. And yeah, so I'm in the process of setting up my internet stuff much better than what I have, and I'll be able to work from my van everywhere I want to go until it gets too cold to be in it. And then
I
I'll
thought
set.
you were moving to Florida.
I'm going to visit Florida. I'm on a journey right now. I'm just hanging out in Fairfield because my younger brother's here and we're really close. So I usually spend at least a week or more here. And then I saw Barry yesterday and he didn't even recognize me. He walked right in front of my car and I'm waving at him and saying, Barry, and he didn't recognize me at all. So
Wow.
I'm going to have to meet with him today and catch up.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much for this class. I really appreciated it.
thank you all for everything. It's so wonderful meeting you all. And I'll probably see some of you at Sedona if you go. You can look for me. I'll be there on all the ones going forward. So that should be fun. All right, so let's close. We'll close our eyes for a second and I know I have something in here that I wanted to do. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May everyone be peaceful and happy. Jai Gurudev. And look for the recording. I'll send it to you as soon as I can, and I'll update all of the mistakes I made. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.